pro season with the PLL is underway after the opening weekend last weekend in Albany and at the Final Four at the PLL. He's at all the things. We got our guy, Paul Carcaterra. What's going on, Carc?
How we doing, Brian?
We're doing well. All right. I want to get into the Final Four and the end of the Syracuse season and all that, but you were just at the PLL, and I think you know this. Like pro lacrosse, for whatever reason, has never really quite caught fire in Syracuse. Obviously the college game is huge here, and the whole deal. Give the Syracuse lacrosse fans listening to you right now. Give them the elevator pitch on the PLL and what people are missing out on.
Oh, I think for starters, it's the best players in the world. The issue is the pro game has not had the influx of Syracuse lacrosse talent like it did in, say the 2000s, coming off the Powell run or the Gates playing in the MLL. And, I think the PLL has done an incredible job of marketing, of branding, and putting their stars out there. It's a great fan experience. When you go to one of these games, it feels big. They do an incredible job in terms of connecting with the fan bases. But most importantly, it's the best lacrosse players in the world. It's a fast-paced game. It's very digestible from the standpoint that it's 2 hours or less. These games don't run more than 2 hours, so it's good for TV windows. They've implemented things over the last couple of years in terms of the ball cover and finding it on television really easily compared to the white ball that some fans struggle with. But I think it just comes down to the product. And I think in the next bunch of years, you're going to see a lot more Syracuse lacrosse players playing in the PLL because there were some lean years at Syracuse. Let's be honest. There were some struggling, tough years. And when you have struggling, tough years, you don't create or develop the best talent that there is. So, the University of Maryland, who's been to, 11 championship weekends in 15 years, they have the most pros. It's not a shock, right? Like you see the success that they've had at the collegiate ranks. It trickles into the pro game. So I think now you're seeing some next level talent playing at Syracuse this year. A bunch of players were drafted, 4 were drafted. So there's just like the equity of following these players into their pro ranks. I think that helps. The Owen Hiltzes of the world, Michael Grace, Sam English, Carter Rice, all drafted players. That's 4 in 1 year. That's a lot compared to what's been going on the last bunch of years. So I think you'll be able to connect and follow their paths and their careers. And I think this junior class, when they get into the draft, there's going to be a bunch of them, from Joey Spallina to Michael Leo to Billy Dwan Jr. There's just so many great, talented young players on the Syracuse team that will play in the pro ranks. But I just love the game because I think it's super fast. It's, from a rule perspective, there's none of the goal mouth. There's some funky rules in college lacrosse I think the PLL has gotten right, and it's just easier for a fan to be able to follow and consume. But, yeah, I love it. The only thing that was brutal last week was the weather. We were in Albany, and it was like 48 degrees and raining, and the real feel at the end of May, early June was 37 degrees, which is not right for this time of year.
No, it was flat out disgusting here too last weekend, Carc. It was not great for a post Memorial Day weekend last year. I will say there is one big Syracuse star in the league right now. Is there anyone better in the PLL than mic'd up Matty Palum like that? Mic'd up, I feel, was designed with Palum in mind.
Oh, so, Matt Palum, for those who are listening, most people listening probably know who he is, but if you don't, he was a 1990 grad and won 3 straight national titles. Was on the best team of all time at the Gates in 1990. He was the goalie. He was the captain. He was always a loud voice. And, the last couple decades, he's, the industry leader in terms of referees. And he has a personality, goes after people. And if it's too hot, Ryan, or if it's really cold and rainy, man, he's prickly and he just gets going. He's incredible. Late in the college season, I think he tweaked his hammy. So on top of, we're all getting a little older and the weather stunk and he's got a tweaked hammy, man. He was not to be messed with last week, but he's great because he's mic'd up. You hear the way he talks to these guys, like it's like a parent telling off a kid who just has had enough, right? He does not want to hear it. But the players respect him, and, he's a great ref at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'll say this. Like, whether I've seen the game or not, like, if I see a Matt Palum clip going past on social media, like, there's 100% chance I'm hitting the play button.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to know what crazy things he's going to say. All right, we got Kark with us. So PLL started last week, and it'll be going basically weekly throughout the summer into early September this year. And now we got about a week and a half removed here from the Final Four. Cornell, they were the best team right this year. They played the best, most consistent ball down the stretch. What did you make of Cornell's championship?
I felt, and I was actually telling one of my friends who's a Cornell grad a couple months ago, it felt like a team of destiny, just because everything was lined up. 1977 was the last time they ever won a title. CJ Kirst was, playing at a completely different level, breaking records, eventually winning the Tewaaraton Trophy as the nation's top player. George Biardi, who's, his number and his name and the significance since his passing on a field 21 years ago while he's a player at Cornell, he wore the number 21. So there's just so many things lined up. He's been gone for 21 years. The hard hat mentality and everything that George represented is embodied in that Cornell program. I mean, they think about him every day. They play with all of his characteristics, and he's more than number 21. He's been gone for 21 years. Just there's so many things lined up, and I just felt, on top of all the destiny and everything that you feel is right about the team, they were loaded with talent too. They had the best player in the country in CJ Kirst, and Ryan Goldstein emerged as one of the top players. They just were really deep at the midfield, and they were really good in some other spots too that that people don't always catch right away, like the short stick defensive midfield position. They had like 5 or 6 guys that they could just roll through, and always fresh and ready to go to play defense. So like a lot of those role player type guys. But then, it's just the storybook ending, right? Like CJ Kirst, first time in his career, he's held scoreless in the national semifinals. In the win over Penn State, they obviously still took care of business, showing their depth and their, wealth of scoring and they can get from other spots. But then when the game was on the line in the national championship, this guy was quiet in the beginning of the first quarter. Then he goes off to score 6 goals, for Cornell to win its first national title since 1977. I felt like it was a team of destiny. I felt like they were the best team. They just captured a moment.
What to you, Kark, makes Kirst so special as a player? Because I don't want to say he's a poor athlete. That's not true. But he's not like a jaw-dropping athlete. But my goodness, like, you watch the second half of that title game, they couldn't guard him to save their life. What makes him so good?
Determination. I think, you hit it. He's not like, he's not the type of athlete that Gary Gait was or that Brennan O'Neill is, right? I mean, he is big, he is fast, he is strong. It's not, like you said, he's not a poor athlete by any stretch. But it's his determination, his love for the game, his want, his drive. That's all. It's all to see when you watch him play. I mean, he plays with a monster smile on his face, but he also is relentless. I mean, this is a guy who played attack as an offensive player. He led the team in calls turnovers. Like that, I've never heard of that. Like that's a stat for a defender, right? Like he's an attackman with 40-plus ground balls. He's got almost 20 calls turnovers. He's just constantly going and going and going. He's got that drive. He's got that engine, and I think that's his greatest characteristic. I think his strength too is certainly in the mix too, because like you watch him play, like he's not clean breaking anyone or running by anyone, effortlessly, but he just uses his body. He's got a really strong core and base. Like if you look at his legs and his, just hips, he just rips through checks. So I think, his strength is at the forefront in terms of his physical characteristics, but I think unequivocally it's his determination and want. Like the guy just will not be denied.
Yeah, always fun when you see the best guy step up like that on literally the biggest stage and just completely took over the second half of that title game. And let's rewind before that. So on Saturday, we're sitting there, Kark, and we all know it had been, back to 2013 since Syracuse had been in a Final Four, and man, you draw Maryland, and the fear was, I guess, exactly what happened. How did that match up, and what does Syracuse have to do? Is it something as a program? Is it what happened that day to avoid things like that against Maryland, the way that seems to go down whenever they run into the Terps?
Yeah, I mean, look, John Tillman on a week's rest, the way that he prepares his team it's very evident he's the best coach in the country, the Maryland coach. I mean, he's been to 11 Final Fours in 15 years, and that's ridiculous when you think about it. His record on Saturday is unbelievable. The biggest issue for Tillman and the Terps is it's only a 2-day turnaround for the next game, so they've when I say only won 2 national titles, it's pretty good, but, he's lost 9 championship games. And a lot of those, just come down to the fact that he doesn't get the full week to prepare. If you give him a full week to prepare, you're in trouble because they do all those little things well. They ride, they clear, they just scout the opposition so well. It almost reminds me of like Bill Belichick in football. Everyone always talks about like he takes the team's greatest strength and he just negates it. Like Tillman does that every single time. That's the first thing, that you ran into a really good Maryland team that was super well coached. But from a talent perspective, Syracuse was just as talented. Like if you were to look at both rosters and you wanted to, trade players, you'd want more Syracuse players probably than Maryland. The issue is they're really deep in some other spots. But I think for Syracuse, look, there were some great things that happened. If you look at the last 4 years, it's a natural progression. Like the first year Gary was there 4 years ago, they won 4 games. Then they were basically like 500 the second year. Then the third year last year, they go to the national quarterfinals, the Final 8. This year they go to the Final 4. So there are steady incremental improvements throughout his 4-year run, and the team is improving. However, they made some terrible mistakes in that game that cost them. Like they couldn't clear the ball in critical spots.
Yeah.
Like they had penalties in really bad spots. They had a lot of like quote unquote like knucklehead plays, right? Like that you watch and you're saying, wow, this is like self-destruction, and there were some schematic things that you probably scratch your head at a little bit, but you understand why they're doing it. Like the zone defense, I understand that you want to throw zone a little bit, but like Maryland wasn't a prolific dodging team. I would have liked to have seen them, being pressed and, try to win matchups. But I think Syracuse felt that going into the zone, and I didn't talk to the coaches about this after, but going into the zone would preserve their short stick D middies a little bit because they had no depth in that spot. So I think, it's a few things. It's running into Maryland. It's lack of depth in key spots, and that's going to be the deciding factor next year. Like you got to win ugly, and when I say you win ugly, like you got to win ugly in certain positions. Like everyone knows you need goal scorers and a goalie and a defender and a face-off guy. That's obvious, right? Like you need those spots, but you need depth. And I mentioned this about Cornell. Cornell had like 5 to 6 short stick D middies that they could roll out, right? These are the guys that get picked on in a game. They get picked on in a game. It's like a corner in football on single coverage to the wide part of the field, right? Like that's what short stick D middies are. When you have 5 or 6, you could just rotate fresh guys all the time. Syracuse was thin in that spot to begin with. When Nate Levine got injured, he was playing fantastic. Mm-hmm. It just put so much pressure on Carter Rice to have to play so many runs, and they only used 2 or 3 guys. And then Sam English had to play extra runs there. So I think they went into zone a little bit to preserve, some of the gas and the wind. But at the end of the day, like you got to get deeper in certain spots. Like you have to, the attention to detail has to get better. Like on clearing, there were spots in this season where like they were clearing horribly, right? Like they got to be a better clearing team. They got to do boring things well. If that makes any sense. Like, you can't have these silly penalties, that puts your team in a compromising spot where the team goes extra man when it doesn't need to happen. And I'm all for playing tough and playing physical, but you got to play smart. So you got to do the boring things well. And I think that's the next step for Syracuse. They have the talent, they have the scorers, they have the really, really like next level players, but they got to surround those next level players with like 30 winning ugly role players to get depth. That's the next spot. I'm not worried about, Michael Leo and Joey Spallina and Finn Thompson scoring goals or Jimmy McCool making saves or Riley Figueres and Billy Dwan Jr. playing good defense. I'm more worried about like next year, are they going to clear at like in the top 20% of the of the country? Are they going to have better opportunities to be a ground ball team in the defensive end after a stop, like the timely things? Like they got to be better at the boring stuff. I know that sounds crazy, but that's really how I feel.
Yeah, and you look at the roster, you mentioned it, they've got all that stuff coming back. They've got that giant junior class. You've got your offense, defense, you've got a face-off guy, you've got a goalie, but it is all that stuff, and it combines with Gary in a way too, right? Because he's so promoting, and we understand why, right? Like the creativity of the game and all of that stuff. I guess how hard is it to mesh those two things, Kark, where that is important, right? The creativity and the flair, that is Syracuse lacrosse, but how tough is it to mesh that with, the quote-unquote boring stuff?
It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it couldn't be done. Like when I was in school, I thought we were able to mesh that. Like Kevin Donahue was an incredible full-field teacher of the game. He coached at Syracuse for many, many years. And what I mean by that is like he was in charge of the rides and the clears. I'm not worried about Gary Gate in terms of his philosophy, how he's going to recruit, how he's going to brand the program. He's going to be fantastic about that. I'm not worried about Pat March running an offense. I think he's terrific. I think John O'Derna's terrific. But I think one of those three has to take some ownership even to the next level of a Kevin Donahue, if that makes sense. And Kevin Donahue was masterful at those boring things, like the substitution game, the rides and the clears. Like he had that covered. Like that was his forte. That was his responsibility. Coach Simmons wasn't teaching rides and clears, let's be honest. And Coach Desco wasn't either. Kevin Donahue was terrific at that. So like he was masterful at making sure we were good at those boring things. And Coach Simmons, when you got off the bus, you felt like you could play at a certain creative style and level. And Coach Desco was right there behind him. And he, when he was the head coach, it was the same thing. Like that was always promoted. But, Kevin Donahue, when I was there, that was a calming force and a mainstay in terms of attention to detail and those little things. It's like the full field aspects of the game, right? Because like you have a great head coach, you have a great defense coordinator, a great offensive coordinator. Like one or two or all three are going to have to find ways to be better in the full field game, and rides, clears, ground balls, defensive ground balls, the substitution game, all those little things.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin literally had notebooks just filled with boring things. Like
he was amazing at it.
I mean, I still remember there was one time we were down in Atlanta for, I forget if it was an ACC tournament or some random one-off game at Kennesaw, and he went to like this face-off clinic in the morning before a game and came back with like this ream of just notes, just like buzzing about like, oh, we're going to change everything. Like we're going.
Yeah, man, he's a teacher at heart. I mean, he was a science teacher at West Jenny, I believe, for 30 years in middle school. I mean, this guy's mixing beakers at 12 o'clock, and then he's teaching you, how to ride and clear at 3.
Oh, man. It's always interesting to watch that stuff go down. All right, last thing before we let you go, Kark, just to loop back to the beginning here with the idea of the PLL and tying this together. Do you ever see, like, I know there's been a big tie, right? They're trying to do some of this regional stuff. Albany's kind of just the way it's worked out has been a good host site and is tied into the New York market. Do you ever see a weekend in the Dome? I know that hasn't been available a lot of summer since the PLL started due to construction. That's now all wrapped up. Do you ever see a weekend of the PLL coming here?
I think it would be incredible. I think, Albany's a great host, but I think the state of New York just embraces lacrosse so much.
Yeah.
And the PLL, going back to what I was saying earlier, too, like they are at the forefront of media. I mean, the PLL has 17 linear windows this summer with ESPN. That's like 7 or 8 on ABC. I mean,
wow.
You know what that platform's like? That's incredible, right? ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, and then all games are on ESPN Plus. So like the TV aspect of it dialed in. I think the production team with the PLL and in terms of what they do in-house is incredible, and so much of it's storytelling. And I think there's a massive opportunity for a great story to be told if the PLL went to Syracuse, right? Like you think of of all the years of professional lacrosse in the MLL, and the MLL and the PLL merged, and so all the records are tied together. There's just a lot of great players, from the Gates to the Powells to the John Galloways to the Joel Whites of the world. Like, there's so many unbelievable players that have played at Syracuse, that have played pro lacrosse. It could also be like almost like a homecoming thing. Like, who would be better to like do a concert before or after one of the games than Mike Powell, right? Like, it just kind of just reeks of great lacrosse, like in storytelling, if it came to the Dome. Yeah. Look, the one thing I would love for the Dome to have moving forward, and I had a coworker at ESPN, Brian, send me this because he's like, Syracuse lacrosse school. I'm like, yeah, it's a lacrosse school. Like, how dare you? And he's like, well, I don't know. Why are there only football lines in the Dome? And you put lacrosse lines in, as a secondary, but it's a football field.
Right.
I would love for Syracuse to have the ability, and I know some of these schools do, like Navy, and there's a bunch of others that have like seasonal temporary lines. I would love for the Dome during the spring to just have lacrosse lines. And I know that sounds silly and stuff, but just the way that it looks on TV and the visual representation. This person who I worked with for years actually did a rendering of what the Dome turf would look like in the Dome with no football lines, and it looks amazing. And I'm not saying football shouldn't be played in the Dome. Of course, it's the house of Syracuse football, and I'm not saying that anything should be compromised. But I have seen these schools that the turf is lined for that season. So that's just me going off on a tangent, but I'm going to send you that text message with the picture,
all right,
so you could see it as well.
Yeah, because they have to paint the lacrosse lines on every game, and like the football stuff is literally sewn into it. So yeah, I don't know what the process would be to actually do
Navy
that.
Does it?
Yeah,
Navy does it.
Yeah, I don't know if do they actually change out the turf, or I don't know exactly how they.
No, I think the lines are like temporary, but they're not like the Powells putting flour in their backyard and making a crease.
Yeah.
They last for a little longer than a couple weeks, I think.
Okay, well, it's something to look into. Something to look into anyway. All right, Carc, always good to chat. We'll catch up again soon. But thanks, man.
Be well, thank you.
There he is, our guy Paul Carcaterra. Always great to chat some lax with Carc. Let's hit a break here in this hour. Brought to you by William Attar. Phone lines open rest of the way. 315-437-7644. Back after this, Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.